All right, let's get into it. Today, we're diving into a source article that, and I mean this, pulls absolutely no punches in the whole Android versus Apple debate. But we're not talking about specs or cameras here. No, no. This is all about the deep philosophical differences in personalization and who really has control over that phone in your pocket. And right off the bat, the source just wastes no time setting the stage with some pretty intense imagery. Apple's world, it's described as a child held on a leash. Safe, sure, but totally restricted. And Android's world, that's the arena of freedom, where, anything goes. This one metaphor, right here, is basically the lens for the entire argument. So first up, we're exploring this idea of freedom versus the diktat. It's this concept of a top-down decree that the author claims really defines the whole user experience. The author's whole point is that personalization is where these two worlds just completely break apart. It's not about changing your wallpaper, it's a fundamental clash. Android, they say, gives you total, absolute control. Apple, on the other hand, imposes what the author sarcastically calls a wonderfully uniform and boring world on everyone. Okay, so this brings us to two very, very different design philosophies. It's really about how each company sees you, the user, and what your role is supposed to be. The author's take is that Apple pulled off this incredible marketing trick. They've somehow convinced millions of people that sameness, that static grid of icons we all know, is the very definition of a high-end luxury experience. Uniformity is the new luxury. And this is where the author drops their key term for this whole idea, Apple's diktat. They paint this picture of some secret council, probably all wearing black turtlenecks, deciding on the one perfect design for all of us. And any attempt to be an individual, any little personal flair, nope, it gets crushed in the name of this perfect harmony. And then you have the total opposite end of the spectrum, what the source calls Android's creative chaos. You want your phone to look like an old DOS computer from 1985? Go for it. A glowing, futuristic interface straight out of the movie Tron? You can do that. Psychedelic unicorns? Apparently, yeah, that's a thing too. The whole point is, the choice is yours.
All right, enough philosophy for a second. Let's move from the why to the how and jump into the customization battleground. We're going to look at the actual tools these two platforms give you.
So, according to the author, Android users have this entire arsenal of stuff to play with. You can swap out all your icons, use a different keyboard, or even install a whole new launcher that completely changes how your phone works. Each one of these choices is framed as this little act of rebellion against that one fixed vision. And this is where the author really lands a punch. When Apple finally introduced widgets, years after they were totally normal on Android, the author just mocks the whole thing. For them, it was like giving a scooter to a Formula One driver and expecting them to be blown away. The two things just weren't even in the same league. And to make this even more real, the author tells this great little story. It's a tale of two widgets that I think perfectly captures how different the expectations are between these two camps. So picture this. It's 2020. A friend of the author, who's an iPhone user, is showing off their brand new home screen weather widget. And they're genuinely thrilled, calling it a true revolution in how they get their information. Okay, so here's the contrast, and it is everything. The revolutionary iOS widget was a simple, cute little box with the weather in it. Meanwhile, at that exact same time, the author's Android widget was like a whole dashboard. It was showing the weather, yeah, but also their next 3 calendar appointments, their headphone battery life, and the latest football score. Oh, and it was all in a font they picked out themselves. And the punchline here? The author just kind of nods along, but inside, they feel like they're patting a little kid on the head for finally figuring out how to tie their shoes. It's a pretty harsh comparison, I know, but it perfectly sums up how the author sees this massive gap in user experience. But hey, it's not all just stories and insults. The author actually brings some numbers into it, to try and show just how big this rebellion against uniformity really is. I mean, just look at this chart from the article. It's pretty stark. The number of custom launchers you can install on an iPhone? A big, fat 0. But on the Android side, just one of the popular options, Nova Launcher, has tens of millions of downloads. The author basically sees every single one of those downloads as a vote for user control. And that brings us to this number, 100%. That's the author's estimate of Apple's total, absolute control over the look, the feel, and the function of their operating system. From this point of view, there's no wiggle room. The author builds their case by pointing to Apple's whole history as a kingdom of no. For years, you couldn't change your default browser, you couldn't really access a file system, you couldn't install an app from anywhere but their store. Each one of those is framed as a deliberate choice to take power away from the user. And for the final, kind of cynical data point, the author talks about the €50 phone case. They argue that the only reason the market for cases is so huge is because it's the only Apple-approved way to show any individuality. So that case isn't just a case, it's what the author calls the cost of conformity. So where does all of this leave us? The author wraps things up by changing the question. It's not about which phone is better, it's about what kind of relationship you actually want to have with your device. And the author basically boils it down to these two final portraits. The iPhone user, they suggest, is someone who's just too busy to worry about what their tool looks like. They just need it to work. The Android user, on the other hand, is painted as the sole master of their phone, someone who wants to shape it to perfectly match their needs, their personality, and, as the author puts it, even their madness. And that's really the final question the source leaves us with, and the one I'll leave with you. Do you see your phone as a tool, something you want to constantly tinker with and perfect, or is it more like an appliance, something that should just work right out of the box? The choice, as they say, is all yours.